Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to stop you. I'm sure you're very busy solving all the problems of the world in the automotive logistics and automotive supply chain, but we want to take a little bit of an opportunity now to wrap up and to share some of the thoughts and ideas that each of the groups discussed among themselves and kind of close that loop a little bit. So I'm going to ask each of the group moderators or whoever's selected to discuss, to just give as briefly as possible, because we've got quite a few to get through. So 2-3 minutes or so, give us some perspective, tell us what you talked about, tell us what we're doing next.
Thank you. Hello everybody. I think our group topic is connectivity and about the visibility, how data is going to help us to make the decisions proactively. That was an issue on hand. And we had, I would say, the most diverse group. I can say that without knowing about other groups. We have participation from OEMs and 3PLs, 4PLs, suppliers, tier 1 suppliers, and IT companies, and financial. So it's a wide spectrum. And the theme, what we heard commonly is the need is there, for sure. And we would like to have the visibility of data and parts and everything. And the common theme resonated with everybody is the standardization. How people are not willing to go into other system and look into their system for their own data, right? They expect the data to flow into their system. I would say that is fair expectation. And another theme came up is who is going to make the investment. Our recommendation is don't sit back and wait for who is going to make the recommendation. You take the responsibility on your hand and you invest in what you need to do and trust people and share the information with your back and forth end, like whom you are serving with and whom you are getting the business with, and manipulate the data in a consumable way and more accurate way and exchange with each other. And eventually we will get into the standard. That's what the common theme, what we heard about. Thank you. I really thank my team to, spend their time up here.
Thanks, Kaylan. We'll go back to number 1, since I skipped straight to number 2. Okay.
Thank you. Should be on. Did I shut it off? Okay, thank you. So I will bring you some exotism with my French accent. So first of all, I would like to thank all the team around the table. So we had a passionate discussion about what will be the impact of the electric vehicle in the supply chain in general terms. So to make it quite simple, because the subject is of course very complex, maybe we can split the topic in 2. First for the production impact and then for the after sales. For the production, some topics have been raised. First of all, the fact that the electric vehicle change the tier 1 how can I say that? The tier 1 network. I mean that we have a spin-off, fusion, acquisition, new territory, new geographies, and that's the first impact on the supply chain we see today. Then after, we spoke about the impact of some huge investment car maker has to do on the electric vehicle and all the impact they have, meaning that the life cycle of a battery and of a vehicle is no more the same. The customer, the cost of ownership for the customer, which becomes to be expensive, and also the fact that you do not design a vehicle for the private usage or for business usage in the same way. So even at the origin of the conception, that they have some impact. Of course, we spoke about the impact also in the management of the number of parts, meaning that normally you commit as a car maker to provide parts during 15 years. Yes, but what will be the technology in 15 years? And how we will be able to provide the convenient parts in 15 years for which kind of technology, for which vehicle. So we also mentioned the fact that sometimes supply chain provider do not want to transport some lithium battery and so on, so that's new topics. And then, very quickly, I will try to summarize the after-sales part. The fact that first, we need to have the competency in the dealer network. The fact that there are some consequences in the end of life of the battery and the management of this. And the clever way, so we had the chance to speak with someone from Toyota, and they are very experienced on that topic. And the way we can use this to create loyalty from your client with the impact of the electric vehicle and the management of the battery. So I cannot say everything, of course, that was fascinating, but I tried to give you the main topics. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good. 3-minute crash course in electric vehicle logistics. So now we're going to move on to another one that can be easily summarized, I'm sure, in just a minute or two. Autonomous. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. We talked about how autonomous cars will affect the finished vehicle logistic, and we had a really good cross-sectional group of people. We had people from railroad, from port, car haulers, freight forwarders, OEMs, all kinds of. So really, we had a good feedback. So autonomous vehicle and finished vehicle logistic, we saw tons of opportunities to improve logistic efficiency. Few things we saw that definitely these cars can drive itself. They can go anywhere they want to. Definitely wherever we have yard space, we can directly get 20% savings in space. And also quality improvements. As you have less touches of these vehicles, the vehicle can drive themselves, go up and down somewhere. So less touches of the vehicles means better quality going to the end customer. And also regarding the tracking of the vehicle can transmit its own health. It can tell you how much battery level I have, how much fluid I have, how much I have. So especially you don't have to go and search in a yard which car has less in charge or more in charge. They can tell you exactly where to go. Also in a parking lot, the vehicle can go, if technologically it can go and park itself where it needs to be. There's an open spot. Also, if you need to get a vehicle out of a yard, on a level 5 autonomous vehicle, it can talk to other vehicles around it and bring itself out. So, and also for auto baying, there are advantages for finding where the loads are, and that's helpful. And also from a railroad, I think Dave from BNSF, he brought us saying, hey, after it gets out from the rail, it can maybe drive itself to the customer, or it can drive itself to a dealer, depending on maybe if customer doesn't want to, is okay with the miles, or if it's go to Uber or Lyft, they may not care about it. They might also pick a customer on the way. So some of the challenges we saw is, logistic cost. I think one of the presentations they talked about is 2% of the total cost of the vehicles, right? So the challenges are what we need from us, combined as a finished vehicle logistic providers and OEM, is software and standardization. As you know, as this autonomous technology comes, it's important for all of us to agree as a group on what kind of a standardization we need to have, especially on visuals, what kind of a markings we need to have on yards or railroad or in an ocean ship container. So these vehicles know exactly what they're looking for, right? And also, if a logistic provider is handling this vehicle, what kind of a tools and apps they use? Do you use a joystick or they use an iPhone app? And how do they use it, right? So this is something needs to be standardized because we want them to handle the vehicles the same way, whether it's an OEM A or OEM B or OEM C. And also but we see some disadvantages. We talked about rail level currently. If you're trial level in a rail, that could get affected because with all the sensors on these vehicles, I might only get bi-level instead of tri-level. And also, we know that eventually in the future, these vehicles can get up, go in a hauler, and you don't have to do anything. But right now, at this time, we feel that we need to still have some manual intervention to secure these vehicles to wherever they are. They are in the ship or they're in the hauler or somewhere else, right? One key area where we saw, as we go to more autonomous vehicle and automation, the skill set of people who will be handling this vehicle will go up. So instead of drivers and stuff, you might have somebody sitting in a control room and knowing exactly where these vehicles are and gets the feedback and touches the buttons and you know exactly what to do to move these vehicles around. And also with level 5 autonomy vehicles comes some other challenges. Matt brought up saying that these vehicles may not have steering wheels, may not have anything. So if something goes wrong with these vehicles, how do you move them? So there has to be some strategy and methods on how to move these vehicles around. And also, one thing is, the key thing what we talked about is how do we get this security risk taken care of. I think in one of the presentations they talked about hacking into the cars. And so when the OEMs work on it, or we work with OEMs, there needs to be some kind of a compartmentalized in the system that logistic providers can access certain compartments of the system, which allows them to move the vehicles temporarily from point A to point B, or it's a ship, the car hauler, or somewhere else, which really does not affect with other features of autonomy that they have for regular consumers. So I think we had really good feedback from the team, and I think it went very well.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ryan. Our next area, we're going to be talking about packaging, particularly packaging in the pull system. So Sharon, we're going to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Sharon Gray with CHEP. First of all, thanks to the team here at the table. I think it was a really good discussion this afternoon. We all agreed that the ideal situation would be to have the pull system, you know, when you're talking about packaging of the parts and so forth. But that isn't really happening today. What we're finding is that, first of all, fleet sizes aren't being, you know, they aren't adequate to start with, even at launch. That seems to be a problem. There also seems to be problems with communication back to the suppliers of, you know, what containers are coming back to them or if they're coming back, as well as then, of course, there's a lot of container loss through theft and so forth. So I think the group agreed overall that, you know, there's technology out there, but just technology alone isn't going to solve everything. We need to have not only the technology, but then the prioritization within organizations that they're going to support that, and then also just to make sure that it is something that is utilized throughout the team, and that the process is followed. So, thank you very much.
Okay. So we're going to move back to autonomous vehicles here. We're going to talk about it more from the inbound supply chain. So, Tim Flucht.
Thank you, Christopher. My name is Tim Flucht. I'm with Penske Logistics. I'd like to thank everyone at our table for the lively discussion. We talked about the impact of autonomous vehicles on the inbound supply chain, and there were two drivers that we saw. Basically, we saw significantly lower costs, and we did reference a earlier PwC study that showed autonomous vehicles will have approximately a 25% cost reduction for inbound supply chain. That's the type of numbers that really move decision making. When we looked at that, we also looked at if you have a fully autonomous, for want of a better term, tractor trailer, the design of that vehicle changes significantly. If there's no driver in the cab, do you need a cab? And so very quickly we came to the assumption that the 53-foot trailer with the tractor attached may become the 70-foot delivery vehicle of the future, where you simply have an optimal vehicle for delivering freight, which led us into the question of what happens to the packaging that's currently used, configured for 53-foot trailers. So there's been a number of conversations around standardization of packaging amongst OEMs, and we think that the new autonomous vehicle in a 70-foot configuration may be the inflection point that helps drive that standardization of packaging. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Some very interesting points there. We're going to stay in autonomous vehicles, talking more about the impact, I believe, on regulations, consumers.
Hi, this is Kerry Zelensky. I'm from Syncreon. As tempting as it was to do our new topic, which was autonomous vehicles' effect on NASCAR, we decided to go with autonomous vehicles, and I put together a matrix. It looks like that. What we did is we had across the top challenges, opportunities, effect on the supply chain, and who wins, what's the success story. And we did it for tier ones, OEMs, finished vehicles, tech companies, and a couple other ones. So you can't really see it very well here, but essentially we did cards. This was all our A1 things, which were challenges for the tiers. And what I'm gonna do, rather than read them all off and so forth to go through it, I'm gonna probably publish something, maybe on LinkedIn, and I'm gonna send it to our group. That's, we did, I thought, a really good job and a good team here. We talked through a lot of good issues, but just a few, just to say, tier one issues or challenges, selling to the consumer. Is it an add-in or is it in all the vehicles? Similar to the way anti-lock brakes were set up. Is it going to be something that they sell to all the vehicles, or is it something specific as consumers want a particular thing? It's in the piece cost, so the investment has to be done in the risk and the R&D, huge risk for the tiers. Government regulations, the requirement to do fast changes, demand assumptions, the R&D costs. There's so many different I call it challenges, and then there's opportunities, of course, and we covered that too. OEMs, what's the market for it? People like driving. Are they going to fight it? The big data requirements to be able to have this much talking between vehicle to infrastructure and vehicle to vehicle. And does an FCA vehicle talk to a GM vehicle, and what's that platform? And all that stuff that has to get worked out. Security, hackers, the jerk that wants to step in front of an autonomous vehicle just to see if it'll stop and not hit them. Insurance companies. I mean, there's a million things, but we try to put something together in terms of these file cards, and I'm going to put something together to share, and anybody wants a copy of it, give me a business card and I'll hand it out to you. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Anyone who wants to publish anything on LinkedIn, or you can use the Automotive Logistics groups if you want, and we'll be sure to share it along with the rest. I think we're moving a bit from autonomy to connectivity now.
How you doing? This is James Williams from DSV, and we looked at how connected vehicles will improve vertical integration in the automotive supply chain. So what we did, we started from a macro perspective and just looked at, do we look at this from a finished good perspective? And if we're looking at it from finished goods, how will we apply it, right? Do we look at it from the processing time, from the DCs to the dealerships? Do we look at it from the lags and the risk and the logistics time? And we look at it from that area. Then we went to service parts and said, how will we look at it there? So we said, if it helps us to assess, part degradation in a part, and that information is then transferred to the dealerships, then those dealerships will be able to proactively call you and say, hey, you're 800 miles from the house. We see your brake calipers are about to go bad. We're going to schedule an appointment with you coming in to get your service part repaired. And then we looked at that and compared that to the buyer experience. And we took the data from J.D. Powers that said, if a person goes into a dealership and has a successful experience, there was a 70% chance that that person would not only buy that vehicle, but from that same dealer because of that experience. So we looked at all of this and said, okay, there's a lot of application for this technology. But what would be the constraints that we have to deal with regardless of what area that we focus in? The constraints that we identified was first, security, right? How do you stop hackability? We just had this experience with the credit card services, so this is now on top of mind for everybody. One of the other ones is who actually owns the data, right? So the data is collected in the vehicle. It is now sold to Kevin. It's Kevin's vehicle. Does Kevin own the data, or does Ford still own the data? So that becomes a constraint. Then we looked at there's this big brother effect, right? And how do we get around that? That was the example that we just gave. Do you really want your dealer to know you're 800 miles from your house, right? And that your brakes are about to go bad and to schedule an appointment for you? So that comes into play. Then the other thing is you talk about just the technological know-how as well as the equipment amongst the whole supply chain. So if you have a gap, right, wherever that lowest common denominator is that strong enough to still enable the benefits that we can harness in this in this solution. Then we talked about the standardization of the data, and I think there was a couple of other groups that talked about that, right? Because if it's all different data, now how do we connect that from the supplier to the steamship carrier to the transload yard to the truck, right? To the integrators, actually to you, right? How does that connect if the data is in different areas, right? Same thing with the hardware consistency, right? Then the other one was, because the automotive guys had adopted technology so early that they're locked in now in legacy, and now how do you calculate the ROI for replacing all of this legacy hardware to come to the hardware of today, especially with how fast the hardware is changing, right? So how do you calculate an ROI for that to say, do we do an elimination? Because we were very clear as a group, you have to get rid of the infrastructure in a wholesale manner. You can't piece it together just because of how fast that was going, all right? So therefore, we then stepped back and said, all right, we just got an angel investor who dropped a boatload of money on us, and we're going to start this 3PL consulting firm, and we're going to focus on that, what area. And so there we said we wanted to focus in on bringing things that just focus more on part level visibility, because that part level visibility will have implications throughout the entire supply chain, would not be restricted to finished parts, would not be restricted to service parts, so we have a better pie to sell to. And with that, our focus will be, how do we take the order details connected to the packing list, connected to the containers, right? So therefore, you can have, in its simplest term, a tile, right? If you can have a tile and you now can go on and click on this tile and see where that part is. Because the benefit for that is it's going to be tied to your inventory management, right? You're going to reduce your premium freight costs because you know where things are. So instead of shipping blindly and expedite, you might know that a truck is going to show up tomorrow and the parts are there, instead of you not knowing and shipping blindly, right? You can ship head count, reduce inventory, reduce DCs, and so forth. And by doing all this, you increase your predictability and your reliability, and you can service the market better. So that's where we end it.
Thank you, James. Thank you, very comprehensive. So it came up in one of the earlier discussions, but cybersecurity. Let's hear more about what this tight, brilliant group came up with here.
Thank you, Christopher. So there were only 4 of us here, and we were talking about data sharing, cybersecurity, and piracy. And I think that the hypothesis is that we scared you because we had the cybersecurity, the big scare title, which leads me to ask you, do you know why pirates look scary? Because they are. Okay, let's see if you can do it one better, okay? The pirate alphabet has only 2 letters, R and... Good job, okay. Come on, pick up the energy. Okay. As Joe said, first and foremost, people need to show up. And so quite frankly, now out of the joke, I just don't know if people came here because they think that this is not important, or they're not aware, or didn't know what to say. But either way, I think we need to start eventually to talk about this topic, just because something's gonna happen. So we had a big division between inbound and outbound, because when we started talking about data sharing, really very different topic. And for parts, one of the questions we had was, will consumers eventually care about which parts are in the car? So if I wanted to know who made my seat, will I care as a consumer? How do I know? Where do I go and check? So that opens up an entire box of visibility. And what is proprietary data versus non-proprietary data? And what consumers should have access to versus not? And that leads us to talk also about, well, how about on the finished vehicle side? Why can't people know where a car is? What's so hard? And one of the big debates that we had in here is how do you draw the line? Which information do you share and which we don't? But I think that the one thing where we agreed on was the smaller the set of data that is truly private, the more you can focus your cybersecurity resources and your IT resources to protect what matters. Because if everything is priority number one, then nothing is. And so I think we just need to have a debate in here about what should be public and we don't care about, and what do we actually keep in the safe. The other thing we started to talk about is who is liable. That was not a pretty conversation. I think you can form your own hypothesis here. I think that the grand theory was that the shit rolls downhill. You guys come up with your own hypothesis. Well, the other question was, well, if we're sharing data, how do we know it's quality data and standards and all these things that I think other table talked about, so I won't take any more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. If there's one thing more scary than pirates, it's probably premium freight. So I think we're going to hear about premium freight and connectivity.
Hi, Sean Masters with ProTrans. We talked about connectivity and premium freight related specifically around the track and trace functionalities. One of the consensus was that improvements in technology is definitely needed based on the current state. We had a diverse group. We had a couple OEMs, a couple tier 1s, premium freight provider, and a 3PL, and we all agreed that that was definitely the case across the board. The integration between providers and the users, the systems themselves need improvement. Better and verifiable information in real time and on demand is definitely needs to be improved. Looked at APIs and maybe how that new technology could assist better than the way that EDI is supporting things today. And looked at the ELD and electronic logs as potentially a catalyst technology that could bring better communication of information in real time. So talked about how container tagging and other sensor technology for in-transit location tracking would be preferred to that level. But we did say that standardization and infrastructure development would still be necessary and needs to be thought about throughout the industry itself. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you to all of you for your participation. Thank you for our moderators for the great wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a chance, of course, to discuss things in a bit more detail in perfectly formed groups. Sometimes smaller is sometimes better, as we know. We're going to take coffee now, and because we're all about promoting good health and well-being, as Mike talked about this morning, there's also some ice cream out there for you. So please do take advantage of that if you're not going on your afternoon run. But do come back in half an hour. We're going to have our last session of the day before the gala dinner. Thanks again.